Well, my wife looked me in the eye and said, "I need space from this marriage." I didn't argue. I just smiled and said, "Sure. Pack fast. It starts tonight." She laughed, thought I was bluffing. But after 5 years of deceit, secret hotel rooms, and whispers behind my back, I was finished fixing what she kept breaking. That night, I didn't just give her space. I gave her emptiness. Because when you betray a builder, he knows how to tear down everything you built together. My name is Caleb Dempsey. I'm 38. I used to wear a badge. 10 years on the force taught me how to read people, how to stay calm when the room is on fire. A few years back, I traded that life for a different kind of honesty. Wood, nails, the clean sound of a plane against timber. I started a carpentry shop outside Denver and put my hands to work building things that hold weight. Things that don't lie. I've been married to Stephanie for 18 years. She's a marketing executive, polished, magnetic, the kind of person who walks into a room and rearranges the air. We had a son, Eli, 16 now. He's stoic like me in small ways and softer in the ones that matter. He's the reason I kept trying when everything else wanted to break. From the outside, our life looked like a postcard. A 2-story house with a porch, a well-loved pickup in the driveway, summer barbecues where neighbors asked about the kids and the business. We had routines. I built the shelves she decorated. She planned the parties I drank beer at. I always assumed the scaffolding I kept adding would be enough to carry us through whatever weather came. It started as small things. Little dissonances you can dismiss if you want to be blind. A lipstick on a collar that wasn't hers. Perfume that clung to the couch like an accusation. Campaign deadlines that kept stretching into late nights. Team retreats that conveniently matched weekend dates she could never quite explain. She'd come home, put on a smile, and say, "You wouldn't understand, Caleb. It's work stress." I wanted to believe her, because admitting otherwise meant admitting something irreparable. You learn, as a cop and as a man who's lived in small towns, that patterns matter. One missed call is nothing. 1,000 make a map. For months, I folded those oddities into excuses for her. The job is demanding. The industry is brutal. People need escapes. Maybe I was protecting my son from the tremor of a fight. Maybe I was protecting myself. Maybe I still love the idea of what we'd been more than the person standing in front of me. Then one evening she sat across from me at the kitchen table and said the words no husband wants. "I need space. I feel trapped." Her voice was soft, almost clinical. No heat, no trembling, just a flat, practiced ache. Trapped. After 18 years. After the house I put my sweat into. After Eli's bedtime stories. After every mortgage payment I'd steadied. The word made something in my chest fold. I paused. I looked at her, and instead of erupting, I listened. I'd been trained to watch for reactions, for micro-expressions that betray intention. She laughed, the nervous kind you give when you think you've pushed someone too far. "It'll be fine," she said. "I just need some room to breathe." She thought I was bluffing when I answered, "If you need space, you'll have it. Tonight." She smiled the smug kind of smile that comes when you've already planned your exit. She thought I didn't know. She thought the discovery of her secret would be mine to stumble toward, messy and loud and humiliating. That morning, I found a burner phone tucked in the pocket of her gym bag, the kind of phone people keep for people they can't put their name to. It was full of words and late-night pictures and a handful of hotel receipts with one man's name stamped across them, Troy Melman. Her boss. 5 years. 5 years of whispered goodnights that were really hello nights to someone else. 5 years packed in receipts and messages and excuses. Every research trip, every client dinner, she told me about had a different itinerary than the one the logs showed. I closed the gym bag slowly and sat on the edge of the bed, listening to the house breathe. I didn't feel anger yet. That would come later, sharp and immediate. Right then I felt something worse. The quiet, heavy clarity of knowing that I had been living in a lie someone else had arranged. I wasn't the problem. I was the witness. And witnesses can collect proof. They can build a case. They can choose the way the story ends. I didn't explode. I'd learned a long time ago. Emotion gets you killed, but patience buries your enemies. When I was a cop, you didn't slam the cuffs on a suspect the minute you felt something was off. You watched. You listened. You waited for the moment they told on themselves. So I played along. Each morning, I kissed her goodbye like nothing had changed. Cooked her breakfast. Packed her lunch. Nodded when she said she was working late again. At night, I'd lie beside her in the same bed where she scrolled through her phone and smiled at someone else. I'd listen to her breathing, steady, content, the sound of a liar who thought she'd already won. But what she didn't realize was that I'd already gone back to my old instincts. I started with her phone. It wasn't difficult. A quick install of a cloning app while she showered, synced to my laptop in the workshop. Every message, every call, every location ping came straight to me in real time. Within 48 hours, I saw the first sign. A message from a contact named Julie, PR team. Only Julie wasn't a woman. It was Troy Melman, her boss. I recognized his name instantly, the kind of slick corporate type who shakes your hand without ever looking you in the eye. I'd met him once at her company holiday party. He'd called me the muscle, then spent the rest of the night talking about yachts. Their messages started professional. Presentation notes, client dinners, travel itineraries. Then came the emojis. Then the late-night messages. Then the kind of photos that don't belong on a married woman's phone. Each one a nail in the coffin of whatever trust I'd once had. Still, I wanted more. I wanted the kind of evidence no one could deny. Not her, not her lawyer, not even a judge. So I did what I do best. I built a system. Tiny motion-activated cameras in her car vents. GPS trackers under the rear bumper. I even tapped into the home Wi-Fi router to record her laptop traffic. And just like that, the truth began to unfold in high definition. Hotel bookings under her name, but charged to the company card. Jewelry purchases delivered to an address I didn't recognize. Receipts from restaurants 2 towns over. Dates that matched her overnight business trips. Every digital footprint she left, I followed. Then came the twist I didn't expect. My brother Paul called me one afternoon while I was sanding a cabinet door in the shop. His voice sounded off, low, hesitant. "Caleb," he said, "I was cleaning out Mom's attic and found something. It's about Stephanie." At first, I thought he was mistaken. My mother had been gone for 3 years. But that night, Paul showed up at my place with a small cassette recorder, one of those old dictation machines she used for journaling. The label read, "For Caleb, if you ever need the truth." My hand shook as I pressed play. Her voice filled the room, warm, steady, breaking just slightly near the end. "Sweetheart, I saw Stephanie at the Denver fundraiser. With that man, Troy. It was years ago, 2018, I think. She told me it was work, but they weren't acting like co-workers. I took pictures, just in case. Please don't hate me for not telling you sooner. I didn't want to see you hurt." I froze. My own mother had known. She'd seen them together 5 years ago. 5 years of pretending. 5 years of her lying straight to my face, while sitting at our dinner table, kissing Eli goodnight, saying she needed space. Paul handed me an envelope with old printed photos inside, grainy but clear enough. There she was, my wife, in Troy's arms, smiling like she'd never smiled at me. That night, I poured myself a drink and stared at the photos spread across the workbench. My mother's voice kept replaying in my head. I wasn't angry anymore. Anger's too easy. What I felt was colder, sharper. I opened my laptop and started building my file. Messages, timestamps, receipts, video stills, copies of her burner phone logs. A digital case file labeled "the space she wanted." If Stephanie wanted space, I was going to give her all the space she could ever dream of, measured in square feet of a courtroom, surrounded by lawyers, stripped of every lie she'd ever built. And when it was over, she'd finally understand what happens when a man who builds for a living decides to destroy. Maura Lynn is one of those lawyers who makes you feel safer by the shape of her sentences. She used to do family law for the department, knows how to read a judge the way a cop reads a room. When I walked in her office and spread the evidence across her conference table, she didn't gasp. She whistled low, like someone impressed by an engineer who'd built a bomb out of paper clips. "Caleb," she said, leafing through screenshots and hotel receipts, "this isn't an affair. This is a lifestyle." We organized everything into folders, chronological, labeled, redundant. Phone logs, screenshots of messages, hotel invoices with credit card timestamps, photos from Mason the PI. There was even a voice note I'd managed to snag from Troy, stupidly candid, a drunk little boast about finally convincing her to leave the cop. That one made my stomach roll. The arrogance in his voice made him small in a way a punch never could. Maura didn't want me to do anything reckless. "You don't confront, you don't leak," she said. You weaponize the truth legally and smartly. I like the efficiency of that. It suited me. We needed leverage that would hurt them in the places they cared about: reputation, career, and circles of trust. Troy's ego lived on client lists and corporate recognition. Stephanie's life was a tidy American package: career, social standing, the image of the supportive wife. Take those away, and you don't just punish. You strip the camouflage she'd lived behind. That's when I reached out to Linda Melman. I'd never met her, but more had tracked her down. They'd gone to the same law school. Linda answered the phone with the frosty bluntness of someone who's been hurt before. When I told her calmly what I had, there was a long silence. Then, a voice like someone coldly reconciling numbers. Send it. She'd suspected. She'd filed the occasional late-night text as work nonsense. But suspicion without proof is a thing that kills you slowly. I handed her a USB and a paper envelope. She looked at the drive like it was a grenade with the pin already gone. I watched anger and betrayal cross her face and felt none of the satisfaction people expect from someone who's been lied to. It was more like watching a wall fall. We made a deal. She blew up his world. I made sure Stephanie could not walk this back into normalcy. 2 days later, Linda began. The first thing she did was deliver the evidence to Troy's HR and his biggest clients, emails with subject lines that would force people to click. Then she posted to the one place corporate men hate most when their private sins become public: the personal feed of the wife who'd been kept in the dark. The post was surgical: a few photos, a few message snippets, and the caption Linda chose that stung with civilized contempt: "Meet my husband and his 5-year humanitarian project." It spread like kerosene. Clients forwarded it to partners. Partners forwarded it to stakeholders. Within 24 hours, gossip had a shape. Troy was suspended pending investigation. The firm's PR team drafted a statement. His phone went dark. Stephanie got the company's summons in the form of an email marked HR, immediate inquiry. They asked for statements. They asked for timelines. The office that had been her second home turned into a courtroom of whispers. People she'd smiled at politely in the break room now looked at her as someone whose name might sink their own deals. Reputation is a fragile thing. 1 second you're polished, the next you're a liability. She came home that night exhausted, mascara shadowed beneath her eyes, and for the first time in years, she did not reach for a defensive joke. She cried. She tried to plead that the messages were fake, that someone was out to ruin her. I listened. I offered none of the theatrics she seemed to expect. "You always wanted attention," I said, the words even. "Now you've got the whole world watching." She accused me of orchestrating it. She cried that I'd ruined her career, her life, her image. I didn't deny the orchestration. I owned in a voice that sounded like bone. "I didn't ruin you," I said. "I showed people who you already were." Word moved faster than any statement. People texted, neighbors whispered. Jamie's schoolmates saw the rumor mill first on social media. I could see the strain in Eli's face when he came home, that awkward knowledge of adult things he never asked to know. He didn't say much. He sat at the kitchen table and ate his food in silence, the sound small and steady, the way a child eats when his world is shifting. Meanwhile, Maura had a second track moving, the legal side. She filed the motion for separation papers and ensured that all evidence was preserved with certified timestamps. She advised me on what to say in interviews and what not to say. She made sure everything we did was airtight in court. I liked that about her. She turned my anger into a process that didn't look like anger. It looked like inevitability. There were consequences we hadn't banked on. Troy's wife didn't just post. She went to the press. The local business column ran a short piece about executive scandal, and then a national aggregator picked it up. Within 72 hours, Troy's image as a steady, reliable executive had evaporated. Stocks in a small investment firm plunged. Subtle doors closed. Stephanie, meanwhile, tried to call me at odd hours, pleading, bargaining, offering to go away quietly. I left most of her calls unanswered. The calls she did get through on were always measured, always terrified, the exact opposite of the smug woman who'd once told me she needed space because she felt trapped. The trap was now on the other side. At night, I'd sit in the workshop with the files laid open, a lamp cutting a circle of light onto invoices and screenshots. The work felt honest. It felt measured. In my line of construction, you take away the rotten beam and the house either stands or it doesn't. I hadn't gone to war because I wanted to hurt. I did it because buildings shouldn't be built on lies. The firestorm had started. The world she'd manipulated for 5 years was burning. And in the quiet that followed each new headline, I felt something shift in my chest. Not victory exactly, but a hollow calm that comes when a job is finally finished. She came in like a storm, door banging against the frame, boots slapping on the concrete floor. I was sanding a table leg. The rasp of the tool shut off when she slammed the lid of the toolbox. Makeup streaked her face, mascara trailing the map of her panic. She looked 10 years younger and, simultaneously, 10 years older, a woman who'd been running for something she'd already lost. How could you do this to me, Caleb? How could you ruin my life? I lost my job because of you. Her voice ricocheted off the rafters. I wiped my hands on a rag and didn't make a move to stand. The calm in my chest was a cold thing. You did that to yourself, I said simply. She lunged at me, more accusation than touch, and then recoiled when I didn't flinch. You set me up. You went to Linda. You stooped lower than anyone could imagine. You had 5 years to stop, I said. You chose to continue. Her eyes searched for some sympathy and found none. You don't understand what I needed, Caleb. I was lonely. You were never there. You just work and build and leave me to rot. She screamed the last word like it would absolve her. Lonely, I repeated, incredulous. You weren't lonely when you were buying dinner for him on our tab. You weren't lonely when you were buying gifts he didn't want. Don't make pity into a defense. She dropped to her knees, hands shaking. The mascara made black streaks down her cheeks. Please, please. I'm sorry. I never meant for it to go this far. I'll fix it. I'll go to counseling. I'll fix it. I laughed, and it sounded too hollow in the wood-scented shop. There's nothing to fix, Steph. You made choices. You built a second life while I built our home. She covered her mouth like the words might spill out deadlier than she intended. Troy said he'd leave his wife for me, she whispered desperately. He promised. I'd already seen the messages Linda had forwarded to me. I'd watched, through another channel, as Linda packed Troy's things and slammed the door behind him. She'd written a short, cold message to his work and their social circles. I'd heard rumors, Troy's arrogance cracking, his clients withdrawing calls. The man who'd swaggered around as untouchable was suddenly fraying. You weren't special to him, I said quietly. You were convenient. A private novelty. Her pleas dissolved into a ragged sob. Then, because some truths demand bluntness, I told her what else I'd learned. Troy tested positive, I said. The words landed and held. STD. The clinic called HR because of exposure risk. You need to go get tested, Steph. The color left her face. For a second, she looked like the girl from my oldest memories, startled, frightened, raw. Lies, she mouthed. They're lies. Go get tested. I didn't soften it. If it's a lie, prove me wrong. If it's true, then you'll finally understand what you handed me on a silver platter while you called it needing space. She crumpled, the fight leaving her body as quickly as it had arrived. Tears fell into the sawdust. I made a mistake, Caleb. A terrible mistake. I just wanted to feel alive again. The words were a confession that fell too late. Then I hope it was worth it, I said. Because for the rest of your life, you'll feel the consequences of this choice. Not because I want you to suffer, but because you chose a life that depended on secrecy. Secrets always have a price. The next morning, Maura filed the divorce papers. It was clinical and unsentimental, a packet with dates, exhibits, and the prenup I'd insisted on updating 2 years before. She had signed it with a smirk then. It had seemed like prudence to her. To me, it was an insurance policy. It was ugly and necessary, and it made sure that a lifetime of lies wouldn't translate into a lifetime of entitlement. Because of that prenup, she walked away with almost nothing. The house, the truck, the business accounts, those stayed where they'd always been. She kept a few clothes and the car she'd insisted on buying. The bank called it settlement. I called it a correction. Eli watched the whole thing with the stoic eyes of a kid who'd been betrayed by the people who were supposed to be walls for him. The hardest moment wasn't the filing or the court dates. It was him sitting on the kitchen counter the morning after, voice small and brittle. Dad, I don't want to live with her anymore. He looked younger than his 16 years in that moment, like a child being asked to grow up overnight. The thing no one mentions about betrayal is how it drags the innocent into the cleanup. We talked for hours, no theatrics, just facts and a slow building understanding you can't hurry. I told him what I'd found, why I'd done what I'd done, and why truth mattered more than the illusion of family. He hugged me then, unpracticed hard. "Thanks," he said, "for not lying." It was the best acknowledgement I'd had in weeks. In court, the evidence, meticulously cataloged messages, receipts, and the recordings Paul had found, did what emotion never could. The judge saw pattern, not passion. Stephanie's lawyer tried to argue mitigation, but the chronology was strict, the receipts exact, the pictures clear. Adultery, misconduct, a pattern of intent. The ruling was fast. Custody awarded to me, with visitation for Stephanie, limited and supervised. The prenup held. She left with her dignity shredded, but her legal demands unmet. After she packed and left, I stood in the kitchen and washed a coffee mug until my hands went numb. The house echoed differently. There were spaces she'd once filled with chatter that needed to be repopulated with honesty. It was quieter, yes, but the silence was cleaner. That night, I sat in the shop and thought of the way buildings survive storms. By having solid foundations and replacing rotten timbers. I'd kept the foundation intact. I'd removed the deadwood. The family I want to keep would have to be rebuilt, but it would be real. No pretenses, no secret back rooms. There was grief in the dismantling. There was pain in the lessons. But when Eli fell asleep that night in his own bed, untroubled for the first time in months, I understood what I'd done. I hadn't just torn something down for the sake of fury. I protected the person who mattered most. And in that, the work, like the shop's steady hum, felt right. The divorce went through faster than anyone expected. 6 weeks of paperwork, hearings, and watching a lifetime unravel into signatures and legal jargon. Stephanie's lawyer tried everything. Emotional appeals, claims of mental exhaustion, even an attempt to argue I'd neglected her emotional needs. But the evidence I'd gathered left no room for sympathy. The judge didn't even look at her twice when he handed down the ruling. Full custody of Eli went to me. The house, business, and accounts mine. Stephanie walked away with a few boxes, a suitcase of clothes, and the look of someone who'd finally realized what space really meant. Outside the courthouse, she tried one last time. Her voice cracked through the chill air. "Caleb, please, don't let it end like this." I paused. Not out of compassion, just to make sure she heard me clearly. It ended 5 years ago, Steph. You just didn't notice. After that, she was gone. Troy's downfall was equally poetic. Linda didn't just divorce him. She annihilated him. She took the house, the accounts, the car, the reputation. Every client who'd ever worked with him saw the messages. The man who once bragged about having it all was now living out of a cheap apartment, selling used cars on the outskirts of Phoenix. Karma has perfect aim. It just takes its time reloading. Eli and I moved into a smaller home near the mountains. The mornings were quiet again, the air cleaner. The sound of hammers, saws, and fresh timber replaced the shouting that had haunted the old house. I turned the garage into a workshop, built cabinets, benches, things that stayed solid no matter the weight on them. Every nail I drove felt like reclaiming a piece of myself that she'd chipped away. Eli started helping after school. He didn't talk much those first few months, just focused on learning how to measure, cut, sand. But one evening, he came into the workshop holding something small behind his back. "Got something for you," he said. It was a simple wooden frame. Not perfect, a little uneven, rough around the corners. But inside, he'd written on notebook paper in his messy handwriting. "Thanks for giving me space, Dad, the kind that heals." I swear, I've never had to fight back tears harder in my life. That moment, that quiet understanding between father and son, was worth more than any revenge I planned. Months passed. I rebuilt my client list. Business started booming again. People trusted a man who could build things that lasted. I kept to myself, didn't date, didn't talk much about the past. I was too busy creating something new out of the ruins. Then one night, my phone rang. An unknown number. I almost didn't pick up, but something in me said I should. "Caleb." Her voice was barely a whisper. "Stephanie, I know you don't owe me anything," she said, "but I wanted to say I'm sorry. I lost everything. I just